Hey, hi everybody. So my name is Mike Essex. I've been doing SEO for over 15 years now, involving roles in agencies, in-house as well, and also freelance. So I've kind of seen how it works in all sorts of different scenarios. And I've also seen it evolve from a tactic that was very much about sort of manipulating Google and just doing anything spammy to get that ranking, which Francesca, you've already flagged is something that isn't great. You know, you don't want to have content on your site that ranks well but reads crap. So thankfully, that isn't really the best practice anymore. It's evolved into a really sort of organic, well-respected tactic that is proven to work. If the video is in the way of the slides, you can just hit the little minimize icon on the right hand side as well, where it says hide thumbnail. So I know people have mentioned that to me before. So I'm going to do a 20-minute overview and try and cram 15 years of experience into that. But if you've got any questions, you can ask me at the end. My email address is on there. We'll also send the slides around and a checklist that I've done as well, which has all of the kind of common things I would look for in an SEO project as well. So don't be overwhelmed if there's too much on these slides or you don't remember everything I've said. You will have it later on. So I'm a search and paid media specialist at the Marketing Collective. We do SEO for lots of different brands and also Google advertising as well. And what I love about SEO is it's a topic that's both incredibly broad, but very deep as well. It's broad because there's a lot of different ways to tackle SEO and a lot of different tactics that you can follow as well. And it's deep because there's lots of different ways to tackle each of those areas and lots of different things you can do. And what that means is that there's no guaranteed way to do SEO. It's not like you have to do 100 tasks. Sometimes you could just do 2 tasks incredibly well and still get a good set of rankings. And I know people who specialize in very small areas of SEO. They've spent their whole careers mastering that one area because it can be so powerful. Now, my view on SEO is that it's a long-term marketing tactic focused on adding value to the user experience and search engines. Now, there's 2 bits I want to draw your attention to. It's a long-term tactic because it takes time to create good content, for Google to recognize the content and your brand and to give you the rankings you deserve. But the flip side of that is the time you invest now will pay off in the long term. It's not like if you stop SEO tomorrow, you'll stop all your progress and all the things you've achieved. You won't. Some agencies would love you to believe that if you stop paying them, your SEO will stop working, but that's just not true. And it's focused on adding value to the user experience. And you'll notice I've put the user first. My approach to SEO is to create really good content and to have a strong website that is great for the user, because that is generally what search engines are looking for. There's no point having a site that ranks well that users don't like. So there's 3 key areas I look at for that. Your website should, and your approach to SEO should be on answering user queries. What are people searching for? What are your target audience looking for online? And how can you have content on your website that answers those queries? Fundamentally, that's all Google is, and other search engines are. Someone asks a query and your website needs to answer it. If it doesn't answer the query, it doesn't deserve to rank. The site also needs to deserve to rank. It needs to be a technically sound website that is good to use, that doesn't have security issues or load really slowly, or cause people to leave in 10 seconds because they can't find what they're looking for. And building a brand works as well. Having a strong brand means that you're more likely to get that click. If you're in second and someone outranks you in first, but you're a stronger brand that they've actually heard of, then you can still get that click as well. And Google will recognize that. They will notice, hang on, people keep clicking the second result here rather than the first result, and then they'll put you in first to try that out. So Google's actually a lot smarter than people think. In fact, they made over 3,000 updates to Google every year. They could be working on one. In fact, they probably are uploading one right now. And that's why I advocate for long-term SEO tactics. It used to be if you had a really good ranking, you would probably hold on to it for weeks, maybe even months at a time. Now your ranking could change every single hour because of the consistent updates that Google make and the experiments that they like to run. It's also important to think of Google as a machine learning algorithm. Every update is not the result of someone in Google HQ deciding, okay, today, what if we rank this better? It is based on Google's machine learning algorithm evolving its approach and evolving what it wants to show. And they also have manual people, manual testers who will go and look at websites and feed into Google what a good website should look at. It's the combination of those two areas is what will determine if you rank really well. Now, it's unlikely they'll manually look at your website, but if you follow the best practices of other high ranking websites, you'll get those rankings that you deserve. So there are three core areas to SEO I want to look at today. There's local SEO, technical SEO, and content marketing. I've got some case studies on these as well. So first up, let's take a look at technical SEO. Technical SEO is based on the website itself and the quality of that website. If the site is fast to load, works well on mobiles, and has a security certificate, which is when your website is located at HTTPS rather than HTTP, these are all good indicators to Google that it's a good quality website. It should also be easy for Google to find its way around. Google has a limited amount of time that it will spend looking at a website and determining whether it should rank and what it should rank for. And sometimes it's search engine spider, which is the technology that looks at your website. It can get stuck on a website, or it can just decide it doesn't like it if it can't navigate it easily enough. So there are things you can do like adding a sitemap, robots.txt file, and a sitemap.xml file. And these are explained in the checklist. I appreciate there's going to be some technical terms in here for you to look up later how to do them. Most of these are relatively simple. And using structured markup, you might have noticed when you search on Google, sometimes it answers your query with a big information box that's dedicated to that topic. That's because that site uses structured markup to tell Google very clearly what that page is about. And the user experience, if the website's easy to use as possible and doesn't have any broken links or hard to use navigation, then that'll drive down what's known as the bounce rate. Now, the bounce rate are the amount of people who go to a page and then bounce right off back to the search engine results. Now, Google tracks that. They can see if somebody has clicked from their search results to your site and then immediately come back. And that's a big red flag to them that your website didn't answer the query that user searched for. And that can drastically affect rankings. So the more you can answer that query, the better. Broken links are also really important too. A lot of the time when a new website is created, people don't take the old website links and point them to the new pages. So if someone's got a page bookmarked and you upload your site, that old link they've got won't work anymore. None of the links Google has will work anymore. So redirecting links is really important. I've got some free tools in each of these that you can use. And again, these are on the checklist, so you don't have to write them down if you don't want to. Google Search Console is a fantastic free tool from Google that tells you all of the issues that Google has with your website and any concerns that you need to action. It sends you regular messages of things you should fix. It will tell you if Google's having difficulty crawling your website, excuse me, and a lot of other checks as well. It's totally free, really easy to set up, highly recommended. Screaming Frog's SEO Spider is another free tool that will effectively go through all the pages on your site and tell you all the meta tags, alt tags, header tags, which I will explain later, and how they look on every single page in a nice handy spreadsheet, which you can then look at and identify any gaps or issues. And if you've got a WordPress site, I recommend installing Yoast's SEO plugin, which also fixes a lot of common issues as well. If you don't use WordPress, then simply search for the name of your content management site like Wix and the word SEO after it, and then you'll usually find some tips specific to that or a tool that you can install for free. It's important to also look at the things not to do as well as the things you should do. So don't neglect your website and assume that just because it's done, don't assume it's done once it's live. There are some web developers who will say they've done SEO on a site and then I'll check it later and it's clear there's a lot of gaps they haven't done. There are some good web developers out there. So certainly not every website is like that, but there's always room for improvement to improve any site. Don't ignore your users. Consider what they're doing on the site and how they're behaving. If you've got Google Analytics on your website, that can tell you how long people spend on the site, what pages they view, how high the bounce rate is, and then you can focus on improving those statistics. And don't ignore the search engines and assume that they can find all the content. Use sitemaps and other things like that to tell them where your content is. So here's a couple of quick case studies. So Solomon Colors spent 3 hours a week on their technical SEO. They didn't make any other changes, but they increased their number of keywords on page 1 by 85%. Drusilla's Park also saw significant ranking improvements, and all they did was add a security certificate and a responsive site. They didn't add any new content or add any links or do anything else, but that was enough of a sign to Google that the site should rank better. So local SEO is next. In terms of the key things for local SEO, the first thing to do is to claim a Google My Business listing if you don't have one that's ready, but also to get as many other profiles as possible in your local area and your niche. So that can involve looking on Google for Hampshire directory, New Forest directory, and seeing what comes up, or searching for your specific niche and the word directory as well, and making sure you're in those. Google My Business likes to take data from many other profiles and listings to know that its information is valid and high quality. So you shouldn't just stop at having that profile. You should also Google your brand name and see what profiles come up. You'd be surprised how many out there exist of your brand name and incorrect details, either because they've been created automatically by some software, or they've been registered by someone else, or you just had a different phone number a few years ago and it's never been changed. So be sure to go out and check them and update them as well. That also is a further sign to Google My Business as to the quality of that profile. There's a great tool called Noam, which sadly isn't free. I think it's a few £100, but that will allow you to register your brand name on hundreds of different sites at once. It's significantly quicker than doing it manually, and it also means you can stop your competitors stealing a brand name in the future. And to be honest, it's worth it just for that. And reviews are a really great indicator on Google My Business too. They're one of the key ways Google uses to determine how high to rank a Google My Business listing. So let's say somebody searches for lawyer Southampton. Google will look at the proximity of the lawyers to your location, but it will also look at the quality of the profiles and the amount of reviews they've got and the quality of those reviews, as well as how up to date the information is on that profile. So you should always be thinking how you can update and improve the quality of that profile. In terms of free tools, Moz Local is a great one, which lets you see any local profiles you don't have. And as I said earlier, doing a Google search for your brand name is a good tactic as well. Make sure that you don't neglect the profiles, keep them up to date. They're fantastic free adverts, especially for local businesses. A Google My Business listing can potentially send you more clients than your actual website if done correctly. Don't ignore the power of reviews, and if you do have any bad ones, then be sure to leave a comment underneath them with your understanding of the situation or a resolution for that person, because otherwise the review will sit there and be bad for business. And don't let competitors or any bad apples get the profiles from you. Make sure you register them first. Even if you're not planning on using them, registering them is important so they're there when you need them and to ensure that you own them. The Glamorous Hour gift shop used Google My Business to improve their organic ranking, and they also got 184 reviews with a 4.9 star average. So it's a fantastic advert for their business now whenever anybody searches for them or any local terms related to them. And they just did that by asking customers to leave them a review and sending emails to customers as well, just to kind of close that loop and make sure they got that feedback. Ace Rent-A-Van used Google My Business to achieve 624 leads over 12 months. They only have one location, so that's a significant amount of orders for them, especially through a free channel like Google My Business. And it even increased their website traffic by 49%. And that's thousands of extra visitors. We're not talking tens, just as a result of improving the quality of that listing. So last, we've got content marketing. So the main bits of this, and I hear that some of you have done this already, which is fantastic to see. You can't rank for something if you don't have the content for it. Like I've definitely had clients before where they've asked why they don't rank for a certain term, and the reason is because they have no content for that term. If you can answer the query with relevant content, then you deserve to rank, but only then do you deserve to rank. Keyword research is the first step of that process, and that's to find new keywords that you want to rank for and keywords that are relevant to your existing topic as well. Once you've got the keyword in mind, and I'll show you some tools for that in a minute, you've got to make sure those keywords appear in the site content, in the meta, which is essentially the text that appears in Google for your site, the headers, and in other places as well. And if you're a local business, sometimes it helps to have the location as part of the keyword, such as Zoo, Southampton. Creating great unique content is important as well, especially if you've got content that's a duplicate of content that's on another website. That can actually penalize you and should be made into unique content. It's also been found time and time again that pages that use a mixture of text, images, and video tend to rank better than those that just have text or just have text and an image. And make sure that you include keywords in the content. Another part of content marketing is link building. And this is what I mentioned earlier. This is a seemingly small part of SEO, but there are people who've devoted their whole careers to just doing link building. So it's important not to underestimate the importance of this step. So another indicator that Google used to determine the quality of your site is the amount of and the quality of links that point to your website. And that's when another website has a hyperlink to your site. To get those links, you have to have a combination of really good really good content that deserves to rank. You need to use outreach, which is when you actually email a site and say, please, can you link to us? You can use PR tactics. So if you write a news story and send it out as a press release, you can get coverage in a lot of high profile places. And you can write guest posts on other websites as well, where you include a link too. Plus, there's ways to review the links your competitors have, such as a tool called SEMrush, which is SEMrush, which sadly isn't free, but it will allow you to see where your competitors have links, so you can then go out and get them yourself and approach them too. And that's what any good SEO agency would do for you as well. So I'm going to show you Google's keyword tool in a minute. That's a great way to find new keyword opportunities. Another good free tool is Copyscape. Now, what that lets you do is to put in a page on your website and then to find other places online that have copied your content. So then you can approach them and ask them to change it. Or if you're the ones who copied it, then you know that you should update the content to have something unique. And it actually colors each bit that's duplicated, so you know which specific lines you need to reword. So here's Google Keyword Tool. This can be accessed by simply searching for Google Keyword Tool in Google. It may ask you to create a Google Ads account, although that's not essential, and you certainly don't need to pay any money through Google Ads to access this. So here's an example one I've done with the terms private school, boarding school, and independent school. And I've looked over the last year, and I've looked in the UK. So you can tailor this specifically to different countries and different time periods if you want. There's a few useful insights here. Where it says keywords you provided, that looks at the keywords I put in. But Google's also suggested some keyword ideas for me. So these are some additional keywords I might want to consider. And they've actually proposed 560 keywords that I might want to look at. So there's plenty of good ideas for me to look at when I'm writing my content. And what's interesting here is that the term private schools near me has more average monthly searches than the term private school. What that tells me is I really should focus on the quality of my Google My Business listing, because most people, that location is key to them. And that type of search will bring up a My Business listing because it's location based. It also tells me that private school, boarding school, and independent school have a good amount of average monthly searches and very low competition for those terms. Now, that's actually based on the Google Ads competition rather than the number of organic results, but it's still a good indicator as to the difficulty, especially as the alternate is to use quite expensive paid tools to get that information. So it means that I should probably write content about private school, boarding schools, and independent schools. And if I could only pick one, then I'd have to choose between private school and boarding schools because they have the most searches. On the right-hand side is quite interesting as well. There's various different filters I can use on here that actually filter those keywords in different areas. So I could say, actually, maybe I want to write about the secondary school aspect of my private school, or I want to know if people are searching for private school for girls or private schools for boys. So I can use those filters just to show me keywords for those terms and create any content based on that. Google Trends is really good as well, especially for understanding the seasonality of certain terms. So here's an example I've done. I've looked at the last 12 months, and I've looked in the UK, and the terms are gym near me, home gym, and home workout. So the trends are probably not very surprising. More people search for gym near me in January, which is as to be expected. And then you can see that that term has declined as a result of COVID-19. Now, if I'd been looking at this in March and April time, and I worked for a gym website, I would start to see these trends emerging and to know, okay, people are starting to search for home gym, they're starting to search for home workout. I need to write content around those terms. And it became really apparent really quickly that home workout is the better term out of that and home gym. So if I could only write a piece of content on one of those keywords, it's clear that I'd pick home workout. And you can see those lines are starting to converge again. In fact, in a few months' time, it'll be quite interesting to see how that shifts again. So some things to bear in mind. Just because having a good number of links can help you rank well, don't just buy a bunch of links from any old site. If you've got links from really bad quality websites, they can actually lead to a penalty. About 4 or 5 years ago, that was a significant issue for a lot of sites where Google started to use these toxic links as a negative ranking factor, and a lot of sites got burnt that way, including very major brands that you would have heard of. So make sure that you get good quality links from respectable sites. If it's the kind of website that you go to it and it looks horrible and it makes you want to leave it straight away, don't get a link from there. Also, don't write any content without first doing the keyword research and knowing the audience as well. Only by doing that will you ensure that it attracts well, that it ranks well, that it gets traffic, and that people want to link to it as well. And don't neglect your old content. You can definitely go back at any time and add a keyword to a piece of content or make it more relevant or expand the content on there, whether it be a blog post or a main page on your site. It's quite common for people to update an old blog post, put 2020 in the title and change the publication date and add some relevant information to that year to get a fresh set of rankings and to make it be relevant again. And as I mentioned earlier, I generally wouldn't recommend that content have keywords be stuffed in where it doesn't read naturally. Google is very good at understanding how keywords connect to each other and how topics connect to each other. So if you wanted to rank for private school Southampton, you wouldn't have to write private school Southampton 10 times on that page. You could write, we're a prestigious private school in Southampton. The in wouldn't matter. And then later on, you could talk about the qualities of your private school without having to mention Southampton. And then later you could talk about the benefits of that location. The New Forest is nearby. Kids can get an outdoor education in Southampton. It's not like you just have to be set on including the keyword exactly every single time. Obviously, you need to do it a few times, but not to the point where the content reads badly. So I really like this example. So Alton Towers is a brand that everybody's heard of. Everybody knows of it. You'd presume their website traffic would be fairly static. People know it's there. But they found through keyword research and optimizing the existing content they had, they didn't even create any new content. They actually improved their organic traffic by 129%. Now, for a website as large as Alton Towers, we're talking tens to hundreds of thousands of extra visitors every year. just by improving the keyword relevance of their pages. And it just goes to show that SEO is beneficial for all brands, big and small. It's always something you should be looking at and thinking, how can we do it better? And Woolhampton is a private school that I worked on. And again, that's why I've got the example fresh in my mind. So for them, I've been rewriting their content for a brand new website and doing link building as well. And what that's done is it's improved their average position for over 100 key terms that I'm tracking. But also, I've been focused on trying to bring in a higher quality of visitor for them. So the keywords I've gone for are not necessarily those with the most traffic. They're the ones I believe have the most chance of converting into someone attending an open day or sending their child to the school. So it's actually increased the conversion rate by 35%. So as traffic has gone up, the conversion rate's gone up at an even higher rate than that. So that it's actually been a really good net result for them. And it's meant less inquiries that are low quality. So it's actually saving them time too. So how does it all work together? Those are all separate tactics, but really, you should do a bit of each, as much as possible as each, to build on that. So here's Hampshire's Top Attractions, which is one of the businesses we manage at the Marketing Collective that we actually work on in-house. So through SEO, we resolved over 5,700 issues. They were flagged to us through Google Webmaster Tools and some other third-party tools that we pay for as well, and my own independent research. Doing that made the site faster, it made it easier to use, and it made it more secure as well. All things that improve the user experience and make people less likely to leave the site. This gave Hampshire's Top Attractions a 44% organic traffic increase for any content that we rewrote as well. So they had a lot of attraction content from that the attractions themselves had provided that was just duplicate content. So by rewriting that into something unique that added value, massively increased the organic traffic to those pages. We also added local information to all of the attractions and improved the link profile by reviewing over 6,000 links that the site had and getting rid of any toxic links whilst also pursuing new ones. And we found that as a result of that, even though the tourism industry is certainly in a downward trend as a result of COVID, HTA actually trended above the industry average stats for all of Q1 and is looking the same as Q2. In fact, it's to such a point now where their organic traffic is now almost higher than it was this time last year, despite the fact that less people are searching for attractions. And that's mainly because of the ranking improvements have been so significant that it's been able to push that up for the terms they rank for. So here's 6 things that you can do right now. You should make sure your site is fit for purpose by doing a technical audit, and that can be done by using Webmaster Tools or by using an SEO agency. You can use keywords to make sure that your content ranks well, and that's your old content, but also any new content you're going to do. You should also check your old content for any duplicate content issues that could be holding it back from ranking. You can use outreach to promote that content and try and get links. You should claim as many social profiles as you can and make sure they have as much up-to-date information as possible. And make sure the user has the best experience as possible, because fundamentally, if you do that, a lot of other things will fall into place. There's a lot more of this in the SEO checklist that will be sent around as well. And just to summarize really what I said earlier is that SEO isn't based on manipulating Google into giving you a ranking. That's usually a short-lived tactic that won't last. It should be about answering user queries, building a site that deserves to rank, and building your brand. So we do have an offer for those on the call today. If you are interested in us doing an SEO audit, which is where I go through a 45 to 50 point checklist, sort of like an MOT for your website. And that's the process I do for any website that I look at. So if you don't have time to action the checklist or you feel like this is overwhelming, we are doing an offer for those on the call today, which will look at all of these areas and a lot more. You'll get a spreadsheet that tells you all the issues, how to fix them, how easy or hard it is to fix each issue, and the potential benefit of fixing each issue. So you can prioritize where you need to spend your efforts. We usually charge $700, but for those on the call, we're charging $495. we'll send details around for that afterwards, or you can drop me an email if you want any more details. So I hope you found that useful. SEO is certainly a very deep topic, but yeah, let me know if you've got any questions, or if you want to email me any. My email address is on the screen as well. Thanks.
Great. Thanks very much, Mike. We've got just about 10 minutes left. So let's have some questions for Mike if you've got them from the audience. So Stacey, I saw your hand go up first.
It was just a question about the Copyscape. I didn't quite understand what you meant. So do you mind just saying a bit about what it was and how we can use it? It was something around you can find out if other people have stolen your content from your website. How do we go find that out, please? You're on mute now.
Okay, so this is Copyscape, and if I find a page, so the way Copyscape works is you take a URL for one of your pages. So let's take this one here, and this is the Copyscape website, copyscape.com. And it's really as simple as you just paste the URL in, click go, and it will tell you all the pages that have that same content. So here's the first one. And you'll see it's highlighted in pink, various bits of content. So those are the bits that are the same on our website as on this particular one. So you can see in this case, nearly all the content is exactly the same. So that tells to me, okay, you know, if they've stolen our content, we need to tell them to stop that. And if we're the ones who took it, you know, maybe that attraction just sent everyone the same copy. Happens a lot with product pages as well. Then we should rewrite our content to be unique to deserve that ranking. As you know, Google doesn't want to rank multiple pages with the exact same text for the same term.
Very interesting, and thank you for showing me like that, because it makes more sense to me when you show me. So thank you.
No problem.
Thanks,
It's a really important question, because it is very easy to find content either being ripped off from your website, or if you're doing something like building an e-commerce site, as Mike just said, if you use the manufacturer's catalog text, the chances are that 20 of your competitors have done the same. So if you rewrite that text, then you're going to help your search engine position. Mike, have you got a point of view on how much that text needs to be rewritten?
So with these attractions, what we've done is we've kept the text that can't really be rewritten. So the directions to the attractions, for example, are going to be the same. You know, you can't reword directions really. So we've took the case of going, okay, what can't we change? You know, what has to stay? And then we'll rewrite as much of the other stuff as we can. I mean, the more you can rewrite, the better, to be honest. There's no like hard and fast rule. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, Janet. Don't forget to unmute, Janet.
Yeah, sorry, I'm on two screens, which makes it a bit complicated. Yeah, if you've recently added a security certificate to your website, so you're now HTTPS, and you've got loads of backlinks that are the old HTTP, does that make a difference?
So does your website redirect automatically if you put in the HTTP version?
I don't think so. No, there are two versions running, which
okay.
will be a bit of an issue, I think.
Yeah, that definitely should be something you should ask your web developer to fix. You can use something called a canonical tag, which is basically just tell Google what the correct version of the page is. So should have one in here. I'm not sure if you can see that. So this is what it looks like in the code. And it essentially says to Google, you know, ignore all those other versions we've got of that page. This is the one that should rank. So that's a good way if you've got like duplicate versions of your website to get around that. But really best practice should be if you put in the HTTP version, it automatically redirects to HTTPS.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Good news is it's really easy to set that up, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it's just a one line of code. So yeah, any good web developer should be able to do it.
So can I chuck in a quick question? If you've got this issue of multiple sites, do you need to put the canonical on every single instance, or can you just put it on one top dog copy as saying this is the canonical, and Google knows that anything else isn't?
It would need to be on most instances, but it would usually happen automatically because the content management system would be the same, and therefore the text that's output would be the same.
Right.
Because it's it's using the same source code on both versions of that page.
Yeah, fair enough. Great. Elaine,
so I was just going to say, this actual one is generated automatically. So we used Yoast's SEO plugin on WordPress, and all the canonical tags are generated automatically for us. It's not something where you manually have to say what every single canonical tag is.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, Mike. Yoast really is a top tip for any WordPress website, isn't it? Having said which, the NFBP one's actually got all-in-one SEO, but that's an equally good plugin. I think that's
great too. Yep, definitely recommend that too.
Okay, sorry, I think it was Elaine's hand I saw next. Was that right?
Yeah, thank you ever so much. Yeah, just a question to ask. If you have got a new LinkedIn site, or you're trying to get Google to actually have a correct link on that, is that a similar thing you can do to what you've just mentioned? How do you get them to pick up on a correct Twitter or LinkedIn site if they're following an old one?
So through Google Webmaster Tools, you can manually submit a link into Google. You can do it through Google itself, actually, if you just search manually submit Google link.
So you just call it submit?
Manually submit link to Google. So when you say there's a wrong one, what do you mean? Is there another company that has the same term? Or? Okay.
What happened? We had to set up a new one because no one had any of the link, sort of the login details of the old one. So we're trying to get the new link into everything, but we're struggling for Google to pick it up.
Okay. You can also contact LinkedIn and tell them the situation, and that you're the correct owners, and in some cases they'll give you the access to the original one, or they can redirect that to your new one, which will also help Google know which one to rank. And if you make sure you've got the correct one linked on your website, that will help as well.
Of course. Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. That's a good point. Most of these platforms have a recovery service, don't they? You can get something back if you've lost it generally. Vicky, I saw your hand up.
Hi, thanks. I've got a couple of content-related questions. Does it make any difference whether the content is over one page or multiple pages? Does that have an impact? And you also mentioned updating blogs. A lot of blogs that I go to aren't dated at all. So is it best practice to put a date on a blog and then be able to update it, or to not date it at all, so that it has potentially more length, if you like? And is there a optimum length of blog? So three questions in one there.
Sure. Yeah. So what was the first question again?
Sorry. With regard to content, does it help if you put it on multiple? Or just one page? So
if it's below the fold, which means you scroll down and there's more content, that's fine. That there are definitely cases where there'll be a big image at the top and then you scroll down and you can see it. That's not really a problem. I'm not a fan of when a blog post is actually on separate pages, so you have to click a link to go to page 2 to go to page 3. That's not really done anymore, and it's not great for the user. But if it's just scrolling down, that's absolutely fine.
What I meant was, sorry, so if you were an HR consultant, for example, and you wanted to talk about, you were a specialist in attrition or redundancy or something, you might have multiple blogs that relate to that content. Does that help your ranking with regard to that search term?
Yeah, that's fine. And you can only really rank for 1 or 2 keywords per page anyway. So often the best practice is to split it up into, each one answers that specific query. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. I generally go for around 500 to 1,000 words or more for a blog post as well. So as long as they're not getting too too limited in the content scope, then you'll be fine. In terms of the date, so often the date will be hidden in the source code of a page, even if it's not publicly on that page, or it will automatically be added to your sitemap, depending on how that's generated. So Google will usually know when a post was written originally. There's no real benefit to putting that on the actual page so people can see it. But yeah, usually WordPress adds it automatically to the backend to the source code.
Thanks.
Okay. I've got several people queued. I did see Jackie's hand a while ago, but I have actually just said to Francesca. So can we just call Francesca, then I'll come to you, Jackie, and then I think it's Janet, you've got your hand up as well. Okay, we're getting tight on time, folks, but if the appetite's here, then we'll keep on rolling for a few more minutes. Okay.
Thank you. My question, I've got two really. In our industry, in the design world, it's often a picture is worth 1,000 words, but in this instance, it seems that it's not, or that is there a way of having those words in the background when I'm uploading pictures and things like that, so that it is just the image that people see and it has that impact without then having to have 500, 1,000 words attached to each thing? So that was sort of one question. And second question was, obviously there's a lot in this subject and it can take people, these are their whole careers. So what would be your tip, your advice really, of saying, well, if I'm going to set aside a certain amount of time each week for what area should I focus on? What would be your best? Focus on this for an hour a week, and that'd be good.
Yeah. So to answer your first question, you can use alt tags to add information to tell Google what an image is about, although they certainly wouldn't be hundreds of words of content. I mean, I do generally recommend a page has sort of a minimum of 300 words. You definitely are going to have some context for Google to understand what that page is about. But obviously, if you want people to find stunning imagery and you want that to rank well in the Google image search, then alt tags would be the way to do it. And having links would be great, because that's like an extra indicator to Google of how good quality that is. So maybe get those photos showcased on other websites as well. Maybe do something like that. Your second question in terms of where to focus. So the first step would always be to do the SEO audit, either through an agency or if you do it yourself, just to add Google Webmaster Tools to your site and just to see what Google's telling you you should prioritize for. If the website doesn't work well or has issues, then no matter how good the content is, you'll be held back. And then the next one would be to focus on that keyword research, update the existing content you've got to make sure you know what it should rank for and that it's got the keywords in there, and then to start thinking about new content that covers any gaps you've got.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, great, thanks. Jackie, you had your hand up quite a while ago. Sorry, I missed you out.
That's fine. Thank you. I have so many questions, but I will be very brief. Yeah, because you've thrown up quite a few that I didn't even realise I had. But just in terms of the HTTPS, do you need a security certificate for that? Because I've just checked out my website and I do have HTTPS as part of my URL, but I don't have a security certificate on it.
That's fine. I think, fine. Your web developer, when you set it up with your web developer web domain host, they would have done something in the back end to give you that.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's okay. If you put the link in the chat, I'll have a quick look, but I think it'll be there.
Thank you. Thank you. The other question was, I had a conversation with somebody around this yesterday, actually, and she was saying about if you're sharing a blog from your website, and say it allows you, my Wix website allows me to share my blogs to LinkedIn and Facebook. She was saying that if you do that that's fine. But then if I wanted to post it separately, the blog, onto another site, I would have to wait a certain amount of time because Google would pick it up as duplicate copy. How does that work? Why? And what's the issue around that? What's the best way to get it out to as many platforms as possible?
Yeah. So if you're just sharing a part of the blog post or a link to the blog post, then it's fine. You can do that straight away. If you want to have the entire blog site repeated exactly the same, then yes, waiting a while would be best practice, just so that Google's got time to know that your website is the original source for that information. If they all get updated on the same day, Google will probably rank the strongest website instead of you, which will be LinkedIn or one of the other platforms, because they're huge and Google likes to rank them. So yes, that is good advice.
So sorry, just to clarify on that. So if I share it from my website, does that just share the link?
Yeah, which is fine. You should do that.
Share the whole content. So then if I did that on LinkedIn and Facebook, say, and then I wanted to put the whole thing on somebody else's website, I would have to wait to do that, or it doesn't matter.
Jackie, I think it's important to ask yourself what you're trying to achieve. Are you trying to get eyeballs to your website, or are you trying to get them to your social profiles? Because at the moment you're doing all of it. So if you're trying to get people to your website, put a snippet of the blog on your social channels and drive people with a link to your website.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been, I think that's kind of what I've been doing. Yes. So I'm still a bit confused, but yes, thank you.
No problem.
That's a really important question, and it's worth thinking through your strategy. As Vicky said there, I often get asked by clients, I've got a LinkedIn profile, I've been posting to it. I've got this great piece of content in mind. Should I write it and put it on LinkedIn, or should I put it on my website and link to it?
Yeah. And what's the answer?
Depends on your strategy.
Yeah, I mean, on your website, you've got all your other services and product information and an email sign up potentially and a contact form, none of which you have if you put it on LinkedIn.
Right.
So yeah, usually your own website first.
Thank you.
Jackie, was that your full set of questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay. I think we've got time probably for one more question, and then we probably are going to have to call it a day. I've already broken Matthew's rule of keeping it strictly to 1 hour, but it's such an interesting discussion.
We'll be in trouble, Rob.
We will. We messed up. We'll be in the naughty corner next meeting.
You can blame me. It's fine.
Janet, you've been waiting patiently.
So can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
For businesses that are quite small and working from home, Google My Business is great, but obviously if you don't want them to put a picture of your home as the location of the business because you want to maybe look bigger than you are, is that possible or not to include pictures of the premises?
I think you would have the street view picture. I don't think you can change that. You can upload your own images in the gallery section. But yeah, I think there's an option to not have the address on there.
Right.
If you don't, if you just want to say the general area. But yeah, you can't get rid of the street view picture, I don't think.
No, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
If you don't go specific in order to try and not have the street view picture, is that going to hamper it being found for geographically based searches?
Yeah, it seems logical that would be the case if they don't know where you are.
Again, I work a lot with micro businesses, and that question of Janet's is one I get all the time. Is I don't want a street view of my house on an estate or down a lane somewhere. Yeah. Okay, Mike, that was a brilliant presentation. You rose magnificently to the challenge of fitting it into the time available, and it's clear from the questions there's lots of interest from the audience. I've certainly picked up quite a few points that have made me think about what I'm doing on websites, so thank you very much for provoking those lines of thought. And lots and lots of good advice that you've given. You've given a great offer there to help people with your website assessment. So I hope a few folk will find that useful. And
Mike, you also mentioned you were going to give a checklist to us to distribute. So that would be fantastic. If you'd send that through to Matthew, then we'll send it out to all the participants. And then obviously everybody, we're going to put this recording up onto the NFBP website. So we'll put the checklist alongside that and Mike's contact details. So if you want to reach out to him, his contact details are also in the chat at the moment as well.
Yeah, and we'll put those on the post on the NFBP website.
Great. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
Okay, I'm glad you enjoyed it. You're certainly you're a very confident presenter. It's always great to see someone's on top of their topic. Thanks for that, Mike. Okay, thank you all. Next week you'll have Matthew back in the driving seat. But if there's any part of today's presentation that you want to see again, later on today, Vicky will send me the footage from this. I'll stick it on YouTube. I'll then link to that in the blog on NFBP, and you'll be able to watch again. So do make use of that if you want to. Thank you all for your time today. It's been good to see you, and I will be along to next week's meeting. So we'll see you there. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.